What is up, everyone? We're gonna have small group like normal people and try not to be like super youth pastory, I guess. But if you haven't, go check out the video. Connor did a great job of the parable of the prodigal son, and the main point that we don't have to be fixed to be found. And like we do in almost any small group setting, we've got an icebreaker question. Super, cheesy. What is your favorite childhood storybook?
Yeah, I want to say it's Goodnight Moon, but maybe my own parenting is influencing and making up memories that don't exist. I'm not sure, because we have a whole Goodnight Moon series for our kids, like Goodnight LSU and Goodnight New Orleans.
It's a bit over the top.
It is, but it's what we have.
Over the top.
Oh, man!
That was good.
It was probably Dr. Seuss. Yeah. Good I'll Go, Cat in the Hat. It's probably Dr. Seuss.
Mine was probably it's the Hungry Caterpillar book. It's the green and red caterpillar who literally eats everything from an apple, which this probably isn't true, but up to a house. I feel like there might have been a house or a car in there. I don't remember, but that, for some reason, the image of that scrunchy little caterpillar has just branded itself on my brain for the longest time. Why do you think stories stick around with us?
I think the good ones stick around because they help shape the way that we think and see things, and are very memorable. Yeah. So whether it's, the Dr. Seuss books for me were helpful in language, and the rhyming was fun, and it's silly, and we get to have fun with it. Hungry Caterpillar, awesome and creative, teaches us a little bit about the life cycle of a caterpillar.
Is that what the book's called?
Right?
I think. Hey, sorry, I got off track.
Yeah, so, the good ones are memorable in that way, and.
I mean, and if you look at just good stories in general, naturally The Avengers is like a really good story. But you've got these awesome characters that you kind of try and put yourself in their shoes, and you kind of see some of the struggles that they have. And, good characters help you process some of these problems that you might be going through. Good stories are awesome. So you've already done the parable of the prodigal son. Again, if you haven't, go watch it. But what's the thing that stuck out to you the most?
The prodigal son is one of those great stories that we could tell over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of those stories too that at different points in my life have probably meant different things. And at this point in my life, the thing that stuck out to me the most now would really be, I think, the father's celebration of his son returning. The way that Jesus tells this story is, I just was really caught up in the joy and the celebration that the father had for the son coming back, rushing out to meet him, giving him his robe and a ring, and throwing the biggest party, and just the significance there was what really stuck out to me the most this time around.
Yeah, for me, it's either the biggest coincidence in the world, but the father waiting as the son comes over the hill and seeing him immediately. Like I said, it's either the biggest coincidence, which is probably not, or the other option is the father was out there waiting every single day, like as long as he possibly could, for that son to come back home. The sacrifices that he must have made, like running whatever he was running, sleep, probably a lack of it, because he'd probably sit outside waiting for his son in the evening, and just you really kind of see the father's love and in how much he was waiting, knowing that his son may never come back, and that he would just continue out there waiting, but that didn't deter him from still just loving his son so well. Speaking of sons, and speaking of brothers, there are two brothers in the story, the older one and the younger one. So what are some ways that you see yourself in the older brother, and then what are some ways that you see yourself in the younger?
Yeah, I am the oldest of three boys. So I do. I identify more readily with the older brother. Again, not without my own share of failures and mistakes, but mostly by the book. Growing up in church and in full-time ministry for like 15 years. So I just feel like I'm in that older brother type. And I do. I get caught up in kind of feeling frustrated because of my own performance trap that I put into my own head, and those frustrations that I put upon myself that I recognize in the older brother. The younger brother, I mean, not so much. What I in my mind, I see the significance in the younger brother's speech that he prepares. And I think of it as, before he even moved back, began to that journey back home, he's got this speech. He knows he needs to go home, but he knows he needs to prepare himself. And he's got this speech, and he's preparing this speech, and he's saying this speech over and over again as he's going back home. And that kind of anxiety, he's got to put himself all back together before he even goes back. To prepare that is what I could identify with.
Yeah. For me, the younger brother, I see he was so ready and willing to just go out on his own, but not go out on his own in a good way. He literally wanted to just be by himself, and kind of ran away from that support system that had been in his life. I find myself doing that often too. I like to do things just on my own, and not really lean into the people that God's put in my life in a full way, which is really selfish. But as I'm also the firstborn, and I'm the older brother, and I relate probably too well with the older brother. I get the older brother's frustration. I get the fact that he was a little peeved that he didn't get the party, especially after he had been running the straight and narrow like the whole time. I came to know Jesus when I was like 7 years old, and again, I've had my ups and downs, I've had my struggles, but for the most part, I've loved Jesus the whole time. And so I can get where he's just like, yo, what about me? Like, where's my party? I want some fireworks. I want a fancy robe too. But yeah, I totally get where he's coming from in regards to that. So when it comes to how the younger brother was treated, how the older brother was treated, when it comes to how we treat others, what message does that send?
Yeah, I think. It's the silly adage, action speaks louder than words, and I think that the way that we treat people really communicates what's valuable to us, and that message that what's meaningful to us, and what we really believe, because we're really going to treat them and behave a certain way towards them, and that communicates more than what we even say. So it's huge.
Yeah, 100%. So when it comes to people who are like stepping back into God's family, stepping back into the church, or just people who are stepping into a relationship with Jesus for the first time, why is it so difficult to celebrate that?
Yeah, I think you said it earlier too, when we were talking about how sometimes we don't want to celebrate people because we haven't had a party thrown for us.
Yeah.
So it's hard for us to, we get in our own way. We don't want to make a big deal about someone who's gone off and now is coming back. And we begin to think, well, there should be a celebration for not having ever left. And there's some validity in that, but that shouldn't negate us celebrating people who have found Jesus. And are coming back. And so I think that's part of it. I think that, I do think that the Pharisees had somewhat of a valid, concern about, there's this weird tension that we find as Christians as wanting to celebrate the power that God has in people's lives and also wanting to value holiness and godliness. And so, are we going to encourage bad behavior? Are we making light of bad behavior? Well, no, that's not. The party's not doing that. The party, though, is just solidifying the value that people have in God's economy.
Yeah. For me, it's just pushing aside the selfishness of like, what about me, and stepping aside and realizing that someone, to coin very, very Christian words, but someone has stepped from death into life for the first time, or someone has found their way back home. When I've been sitting at home, not coming, but been sitting at home, it's just getting out of your own way. It's stepping out of the way of how can I celebrate me, but stepping into how do we celebrate all the awesome things that God's doing. Now I know some people, they like me, don't like to be the center of attention. Sometimes it can be a little awkward. So how do we make celebrating people less awkward?
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't celebrate enough. So if we only celebrate people when they do, come back, so to speak, or return, then it is like shining a spotlight, like, hey, we haven't seen you since Christmas, but you're here now, so welcome. And that's just can be really weird, because you're right, not everybody loves the spotlight. So recognizing that different people like to celebrate in different ways, and there's not one set way to. I mean, clearly, fireworks and barbecue are the best way to have parties, but not everyone. I love surprise parties. Rachel doesn't, so we celebrate in different ways.
Yeah.
And I think we do. We build a culture of celebration. I mean, not just for our youth group, but even for personally, for our family and for ourselves. We just build a culture of celebration, celebrating the great things that God has done. So we celebrate when people come back, and we celebrate all kinds of times.
So I just hear more parties. We just need to have
more parties.
Yes. Probably cookie cake involved in those parties.
Cookie cakes, barbecue, fireworks.
So we've talked a lot of big subjects, but let's get actually hands-on. Let's get a little applicable. How can the way that we see people change the way that we treat people? And then let's get a little introspective too. How can the way that we see ourselves change the way that we treat ourselves?
So I'm broken because I'm only thinking about what I taught on Sunday.
That's fair.
I think it's so.
That's fair.
So I'll give my answer, and then you'll probably give a better personal answer.
Yes.
I do. I think it's easy for us to think about how we want to treat someone, but we won't be able to treat them the way that we know we should until we change the way we think about them. Mm-hmm. So it's easy for us to say we should be welcoming and we should be inviting and glad to see people, but instead, if our first reaction is a gasp, they're here, that means we need to work backwards from that and change the way that we think about them and begin to think about them as a child of God and begin to pray for them and to begin to just be a good friend. So then when they just naturally show up, maybe even out of invitation because we've invited them, and they show up, then we treat them the way that we would want to be treated. And so it might be a helpful exercise to go, how would we treat that person? Now let me back up and then change the way I think about them.
Yeah. I feel like the answer is really simple. The answer, bear with me. Practice is hard, but the answer, I feel like is, if we see everyone, including ourselves, the way that God sees us as precious, valuable creations, as children, then the way that we treat other people and the way that we treat ourselves should be an outflow of that understanding of who that person is, that intrinsic value that someone has. But like I said, it's a lot easier said than done because, someone could walk up into a room and you're just like, oh my gosh, this person, really? I have to breathe the same air as this person. But catching yourself when that happens and turning around and saying, regardless of how the personal frustrations I get when I'm around this person, they're someone who is a child of God, who's created in the image of God, who has value and is precious to God, so therefore I should treat them like they have value and are precious. And that's hard because we're selfish. I'm selfish, and a lot of times I just catch myself just going, oh please, not today. Don't want to talk to Connor. Wait, no. Don't want to talk to that person today. But if we really kind of see them through that lens, I think it really changes the way that we see other people. And then flip side of that, we're also people too. And so the way that we see ourselves changes the way that we treat ourselves.
I think the practical is the answer to that, is the boring answer to that we need to begin to see as the exciting answer to that, which is we spend more time with God.
Yep.
I mean, it's the spiritual disciplines of spending time in prayer, spending time in worship, spending time reading God's word, and spending time in community.
Yep.
I mean, we just need to understand that those are the exciting answers instead of the boring answers. But if we did that, it would begin to change the way that we think about ourselves.
Right.
And change the way we see others like that. So the answers are simple. They're right there. They haven't changed.
Nope.
They're just doing them.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that is it. I mean, we talked. The only thing that we want to leave you guys with is we talked a lot about the older brother, younger brother situation, but not missing out the father in the story. I mean, Jesus spoke in a way that impacted everyone who was listening to him and us. But he's really explaining too something about the nature of God. Both the older son and the younger son had their faults and misses, and both did not understand the depth of the Father's love for them. And that greatness of God's love for you, don't miss it. We should not miss that, depending upon, no matter how we see ourselves. We can't miss the vast depth and greatness that God's love has for you. So hey, look, pause this video. The small group questions are going to go on the screen. Take some time and answer them. This was weird.
I liked it.
But it was good.
It was
and
good.
And so until we can get all of you together in a room like this, we're going to try this out and see how it goes. So until next week.
See you guys later.
See you then.